Hello there, good morning, and welcome to Claret and Booze. My name's Virgil, also known as John, and today is my daily ramble having a rank. Although, as you can see, I'm not on a rank yet because I haven't started work. I'll be leaving in about half an hour or so. But I thought it was quite important to come on and do a recording ASAP because there's been a lot of breaking news, a lot of quotes, a lot of supposed um, releases of information from the top coming out on various sources across social media. And once again, we're in a situation where the person at the top of the tree seems to want the club to be a circus. The person at the top of the tree seems to not be able to release information that undermines people at the club who are good at what they do, who are ultimately top at what they do. But what happens is the person at the top of the tree doesn't want to take any flack whatsoever and will pass the buck onto those that are only there to help the club. Now, as we know, there's been a big debate, especially since the results haven't been fantastic as the season started and the season's unfolded. There's been a big debate about who brought what players in. There's been a big debate about who wanted the manager. Was the manager wanted by Sullivan? Was the manager wanted by Steidten, etc., etc.? Now, it would seem, and, you know, a lot of this is like a domino effect. It becomes blatantly obvious, or maybe as you read more into this. Now, I, for one, was buoyed by the interview that Tim Steidten did live on TV before the Chelsea game. Now, a lot of people came out and said, "Well, why's the director of football doing a television interview before a big game, big London derby against Chelsea?" And I think it was important purely based on the fact that Steidten was looking to show a sense of solidarity, a togetherness with himself and Lopetegui, who we're led to believe, with recent information coming out from the club, that wasn't Steidten's first choice. Now, again, as director of football, Steidten has built a squad. Steidten's been building a squad, a style of play, and he would have had managers in mind to bring into the club to take the club further. Now, whether Steidten wanted Lopetegui or not is neither here nor there for me, especially when I saw this interview, because the interview to me showed him trying, being professional to bring a sense of unity. Yes, I was behind the Lopetegui appointment. We needed an experienced manager, and we felt that Lopetegui would be the guy to take us forward. But what's happened in the meantime is, just yesterday, I believe, speaking to Hammers News, journalist Graham Bailey, used to work for Sky Sports, etc., came out and sort of curtailed the fact that there was unity, curtailed the fact that Lopetegui was happily signed off by Steidten. And I'll read this out to you because I've got it here in front of me. I understand, this is from Graham Bailey, the journalist, who I said spoke to Hammers News. I understand that Tim Steidten helped finalise the deal for Lopetegui, but it was not his call to bring him in. Far from it, Bailey told Hammers News. Steidten warned to bring in a manager that he thought, Steidten wanted to bring in a manager that he thought would suit the squad going forward, someone different to Moyes and indeed different to Lopetegui. However, David Sullivan was won over by Lopetegui after they met back in April, and that was the deciding factor. Sullivan was warned by Steidten and others within the club's hierarchy about the issues that could arise from appointing him. Now, you may say, well, what's the problem there? Sullivan is the owner of the club. But as we know, Sullivan does things to suit him. Sullivan does things to suit him and his associates around him. Now, this all goes back to the situation we had when the Portuguese manager, the young upcoming manager, Amarin, was linked with the club. Because if we think back to that situation, and we discussed it on here and it was discussed everywhere, when Amarin flew from Portugal over to London, he was met by journalists and indeed some fans at the airport, Portugal side. And we was questioning, how would the press and the fans, some fans, how would they have known that Amarin was flying over late one evening to London to talk to Steidten and to be put in front of Sullivan to put his case forward as to why Steidten felt at that time, and I'm sure he still does now if he's honest, that Amarin would be the right fit for the club in order to take the club forward. And it's no coincidence really that the representative of Lopetegui, as we know, is a close associate with Brady and or Sullivan, a person who has been involved in and around the club, dealings in and around the club with Sullivan and Brady and all those at the top for some time. So could it be then, could it be that this leak came from the top in order to scupper the deal that possibly would have put Amarin in charge of the club? Now, initially, the rumours are that we've had is that Steidten was willing to accept that Lopetegui was appointed, as Sullivan was really pushing for this appointment. But Tim wanted to, have a set of KPIs, performance-related stipulations inserted into his contract. Lopetegui wasn't having any of it. And this is where the Amarin link then came in. Lopetegui refused to sign a KPI-related deal, supposedly. And that is when Tim went to Sullivan and said, well, I've got a manager. I've got a guy who I think would be perfect for the job, would be perfect to take the club forward. And that man was Amarin. But it would seem that that leak led directly to Sullivan then being able to offer Lopetegui a two-year deal. A 2-year deal with no clauses, a 2-year deal with no KPIs, no performance-related clauses inserted into that deal. It stinks if this is true. Now, obviously, a lot of this is rumours, but when you see, well-respected journalists like Graham Bailey suggesting that Lopetegui wasn't really happily signed off by Steidten, it was more signed off due to the fact that Sullivan pushed for it and the Amarin deal fell through. In my mind, there's no doubt that as he was the manager at the time, Amarin's would have been quite upset and would have left a bitter taste in his mouth seeing that the press had got hold of it. It would have damaged his reputation amongst the fans that love him over there and the fans that he loves. But every manager wants to move on and every manager wants to better themselves. But mid-season, the fact that it was released to the press, 100% it was released to the press. Otherwise, how would they have known? Probably put end to that deal. Maybe Amarin even thought, not sure I can walk out on my fans, my team at this time of the season. So you can imagine then Tim's upset at this, his disdain at this. It would have left a bitter taste in his mouth. Okay? And now that we've heard that from somebody who's very well respected like Graham Bailey, it's interesting for me. It just stinks. It absolutely stinks. And I think that as West Ham fans, we are aware absolutely aware the problem with our club. And it is like going round and round in circles at every opportunity when something goes wrong, when things aren't as rosy as we'd like them to be. Our owner, David Sullivan, comes out and distances himself from these things. So we've now got a situation, after hearing that yesterday via Hammers News, we've now got the situation where it would seem that Sullivan has hit back at the quotes from Graham Bailey regarding Steidten, Amarin, Lopetegui. And now Sullivan has decided to hit back and play the public blame game, the usual, that distances himself from anything that goes wrong. You know, the man is the biggest egomaniac I've ever fucking known. And the problem with that is that he's running our club. And for me, he will always ultimately be the problem. Now, we've got the problem here. This is taken from a source. And the problem we've got now is that Sullivan has come out already and started to blame Tim for the players that we've brought in. Sullivan has now taken credit for one and one only player, and that would be Somerville. It's no coincidence that the player that the fans are, you know, recently, Chelsea game, was happy with his performance. They booed Lopetegui when he took Somerville off. All of a sudden, Sullivan's come out and gone, oh, hang on a minute, Somerville was my signing. All the others were Tim's. The only player that I really wanted was Somerville because I love good Championship players. He was also, or the source, well, we can't say it was Sullivan, but the source, which we know is Sullivan, let's be fucking honest. He was also asked whether Tim Steidten warned off the appointment of Lopetegui. And the source gave this answer. 100% he was at the interviews of the prospective manager, and decision to appoint Lopetegui was unanimous. You know, Steidten's been in the press. He's blamed unsuccessful transfers on Moyes in the past, you know, back in the day when Moyes was in charge. It's the public blame game is the problem I have. You have the director of football on Saturday coming out and trying to create a unanimous, unified team, club. And I hope that's true. I, for one, hope that they are unified together. But when you have the man at the top of the tree coming out and basically only laying claim to one player, the player that he thinks is a little bit of a fan's favourite at the minute in Somerville, when you have the man at the top, seemingly, if these rumours are true from the top sources, that the Amarin deal was scuppered, that information was released to almost stop that deal happening because the Loppy situation was more interesting to Sullivan, or was it because of the Loppy representative who we know is close to those at the top of this club? We're 5 games in and our chairman is playing the public fucking blame game already. Our chairman cannot shut his mouth. When is this guy going to realise that he doesn't need to comment on everything? People have told me in the past that he worries about the public perception of him, what the fans think about him. Well, he obviously fucking don't, because he's going about it the completely wrong way. He needs to shut his mouth. He needs to stop coming out and playing the blame game. The situation we have is the situation we have now. We as fans can't change it, right? But ultimately, we fans know that most of the problems arise from the owner of the club, who likes to leak information that constantly portrays him in the best light possible. For me, Sullivan is lining Tim up to be the fall guy in this whole situation, suggesting that Tim was 110% behind the Loppy deal, telling you or telling us that Tim had carte blanche over the players that we brought in, apart from Somerville, because I like Somerville and I know the fans do. So, yeah, that one was me. This guy ultimately is a poisoned dwarf. This guy ultimately is an absolute clown. But the situation we find ourselves in now, as I said, is the situation we have to deal with. And I hope for one that Tim and Loppy can work together. However, there is always that concern. You know, Lopetegui could walk. Lopetegui could walk. He did it at Wolves. You know, they spent £110 million and he walked. Reasons that he gave were that he was given false promises and promises were broken. What's to say he wouldn't walk again? What's to say he wouldn't walk out on us at some point? Now, I hope to God that that wouldn't be the case. And I'd be very surprised if he did it for a second time, purely because, to some extent, leaving Wolves damaged his professional reputation somewhat. But doing it again at a second club, i.e. walking out in West Ham, would damage it furthermore. We're in a bit of a shit state at the minute. And I'm not Loppy out. Of course I'm not. I'm supporting him 100%. I'll question his decisions in games and substitution and tactics. Of course I will. But he's the expert. So I have to put my faith in him. And I hope that I'm right, that he can turn it around. But if he can't, then what? Will Sullivan come out all guns blazing, blaming Tim for the signings? Will Tim walk away? Will Tim allow himself to be the fall guy? I'm not sure he will. You know, before he came to us, Steidten had a lot of clubs, you know, wanted these services, and you know, I question it all. I question the ownership. I'll always question the ownership, because as long as you have those owners there, namely fucking Sullivan, you will always have problems. There's no strength from the top of the club, and it will always filter down and manifest its way through the club with doubt and intrigue and blame and snakiness, if that's even a fucking word, I don't know. But I, for one, want it to work, okay? But it would seem that Sullivan has got his way again and is already making the blame and the accusations that Tim bought all the players. Now, that's what a director of football should do. So I haven't got a problem with that. It's just the fact that Sullivan will only take claim for Somerville. Lopetegui is a good manager, all right? He has his faults, and we can all pick holes in managers. And I hope that on the training ground, as Tim said in that interview, he spends a lot of time at training, discussing and talking things with Lopetegui. I hope those two can bring it together and continue to have a unified front. Even if the man at the top, who seems to have verbal diarrhea, can't, and continuously leaks information to certain people in the West Ham world, West Ham media. Now, obviously, tomorrow, perfect opportunity for Lopetegui to turn things around somewhat and get fans that have possibly had enough already back on side. We've got that trip in the Carabao Cup up to Liverpool. Now, as we know, I think we've had one win up there since 1963. Our form isn't fantastic up there. We know what happened last year under Moyes when we got thumped by the Liverpool second string. Now, I don't know if Arne Slot is going to make wholesale changes, purely because he's new to the job. And for him you know, he'll want to get a trophy under his belt as soon as he can. So I think he'll go fairly strong. But whether he goes strong, whether he throws in a bunch of kids or reserves or whatever, is neither here nor there for me. We have to go strong. We have to play our strongest available 11, and we have to play the 11 that complement each other on the pitch. No square pegs in round holes. Let's play people in their strongest positions, in my opinion. We need to win this game, or at the very least need to give a very good account of ourselves. We're not in Europe anymore. We've just got the Premier League and the 2 domestic cups to concentrate on. So let's give it a go. Not only that, Lopetegui, think of the fans that are travelling all the way up there, spending vast amounts of time on the trains, on the motorways, you know, on a Wednesday cold night. You know, let's get something to get our teeth into. Let's revert back to being on the front foot, but not only being on the front foot, don't just have possession for possession's sake. Let's get the team going. Let's get motivated. I, for one, want to see effort. Effort, you know, look how we did against Man City. We lost, but we came out happy with that performance because the effort and the endeavour and the work rate. I want to see that. I don't want to see a lackadaisical approach to this game like we saw against Chelsea for whatever the reasons. For me, the double pivot doesn't work with Rodriguez and Alvarez. They're too similar and they're both very slow. I don't want to see Alvarez dropping in as the third centre-back into the middle, splitting Kilman and whoever it might be, Mavropanos. And then when Alvarez gets caught, the space between our centre-backs is too big. I don't want to see that. We don't need to do that. It's a big game tomorrow for many, many reasons. I'm not, as I say, I'm not one of those fans that is loppy at, but I know a few people that are. Or I know a lot of people that are quite disheartened by what they've seen. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the performances have been disheartening. None more so than the Chelsea game. It was embarrassing. We didn't lay a glove on them. I want to see tomorrow night us go for it. I want to see the strongest team available. I think we need to give Soler a go. Maybe Soler alongside Alvarez in that double pivot. At least with Soler, you have a more progressive player. You have a player that can play the ball through the lines. And Paqueta then won't have to come so deep to receive the ball, because when Paqueta's coming deep, the space between the midfield and the striker gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's see us tomorrow go out and give a massively fantastic account for ourselves. Let's see Loppy, let's see you put us on the front foot against a big club. We've got to go for it, mate. We've got nothing to lose. Yeah, let's give it a good bloody go. Let's give a good account of ourselves. Let's get the fans that we may have lost already. Let's get them back on side. Yeah, because after the City game, you had a lot of fans backing you, and I know we're only 5-6 games in, so I'm not worried yet. But I've seen signs that I'm not happy with, and that's the problem. Right, so look, I've rambled on for 23, 24 minutes here, so, you know, I've covered quite a lot. But ultimately, it would seem, to sum it all up, Steidten didn't want Loppy. He only wanted Loppy with KPIs in his contract. Loppy refused the contract. Tim then went to get Amarin. In the meantime, on his journey over to get Amarin, Sullivan and Loppy had seemingly, or Loppy's representative, we know who that is, Shithouse, had come up with a 2-year deal with no KPIs, with no clauses. The Amarin deal then was leaked to the press. The press were all over him at the Portuguese airport, which, in my opinion, put him on the back seat and thought, maybe I don't want this job anyway. Didn't want to walk out on his own fans over there in Portugal. Tim comes back. The Loppy deal's on the table. Tim's got no choice but to go with it again, trying to create a unified environment at the club, which I respect. We've now got Graham Bailey, the journalist, coming out and saying that Loppy wasn't Tim's man. Loppy didn't happily sign off. So that would then push Sullivan into coming out into the press and actually going, no. Tim was more than happy with the Lopetegui signing. Oh, also, by the way, every signing we've made is Tim's, apart from Somerville, because I think the fans like Somerville, so I'll take credit for that. Listen, I hope things go well. Of course I do. There isn't one West Ham fan out there that wants Loppy and this season to be a failure. But I tell you what, once more, if it does materialise like that, there's only one man to blame, and we all know who that is. Anyway, look, thanks for watching. Please hit the like button. If you haven't already subscribed, then do so. And if you have any comments or questions, leave them on the show. I'll answer as many as I can. I've got to get to work now. London's 5th emergency service. Come on, you irons.